In July of 1187, a king stood at the edge of a decision that would echo through 1,000 years of history. He had an army, the largest his kingdom could muster. He had fresh water in abundance. He had the counsel of the wisest commander in the land, telling him exactly what he must do. Stay where he was. He chose to ignore every word of it. He chose to march. 4 days later, Jerusalem fell, not because the enemy was unstoppable, but because one man could not bring himself to listen. The kingdom of Jerusalem in 1187 was a narrow strip of land hugging the eastern Mediterranean, a Christian island in a Muslim world now united under one ruler, Saladin. Saladin had assembled the largest army the region had ever seen. His target was Jerusalem itself. Standing between him and that city was exactly one thing: the kingdom's field army. Roughly 1,200 knights and 18,000 foot soldiers had gathered at Sephoria, a camp surrounded by springs of fresh water. High ground, easily defended. The army was led by King Guy of Lusignan, a man who gained his crown through political maneuvering, not proven command. His authority was uncertain, his reputation fragile, and everyone in that camp knew it. On July 2nd, devastating news arrived. Saladin had crossed the Jordan and stormed the town of Tiberias, 15 miles east, though its citadel still held out. Trapped inside was the wife of Count Raymond of Tripoli, the kingdom's most experienced military leader. If any man had reason to ride immediately to the rescue, it was Raymond. Yet, when the war council gathered, Raymond rose and stunned everyone present. Do not march. Saladin wanted precisely one thing: to lure the army off this water-rich ground onto the barren plateau, where heat and thirst would do his work for him. Stay here. Make him cross the same killing field to reach us. Reinforcements were coming. Time favored the defender. The council agreed. The army would stay. But after the council dispersed, a second meeting took place, private, in the dark. Gerard de Ridefort, Grand Master of the Knights Templar, entered the king's tent alone. He was everything Raymond was not: impulsive, aggressive, incapable of accepting counsel that sounded like inaction. He had hated Raymond for years. Now he aimed at the king's deepest wounds, calling Raymond a traitor and reminding Guy he had once been mocked openly for failing to engage the enemy. Weak, indecisive, unfit to wear the crown. Ridefort had leverage too. It was widely believed the Templars had helped fund Guy's soldiers and could withdraw that support, collapsing the fragile kingship overnight. Guy sat alone, caught between the calm voice of a man whose wife was in mortal danger and the voice that spoke to his pride, his shame, his desperate need to prove himself a warrior king. At dawn on July 3rd, the camp stirred with confusion. The army would march. Raymond learned of the order like everyone else, by the sound of tents collapsing and horses being saddled. The consensus of every experienced commander had been overturned by a single conversation in the night. Raymond could have refused. He knew this terrain better than any man alive. But defiance in the face of the enemy would shatter what little unity remained. So he took his place at the head of the column after column, knights in chainmail, foot soldiers gripping spears. The sacred relic of the true cross held high, streamed out of Sephoria, leaving behind water and shade, walking into a landscape that offered no mercy. Within hours, the temperature soared past 100 degrees. Saladin's mounted archers appeared on the flanks, firing volleys, vanishing into dust, firing again. Men in armor discovered, for the first time, what real thirst felt like. By midday, the army reached the last reliable spring before the open plateau. Raymond urged the king to stop. The position was defensible. They could still force Saladin to fight on their terms. Guy refused and ordered the column forward. Saladin's men sealed off that water behind them. The trap had closed. The afternoon became a furnace. Skirmishers tormented the rear guard, tearing a gap between divisions. Men collapsed from heat stroke. Horses died in their tracks. By late afternoon, the army halted on a dry hillside below a double-peaked ridge, the Horns of Haddon. The only well was bone dry. Raymond, seeing what had become of the camp, spoke words that became the epitaph of the campaign. The war is over. We are dead men. The kingdom is finished. That night the army sat in circle, listening to Saladin's men below, drinking, singing, lighting fires whose smoke choked men already dying of thirst. At dawn the survivors fought with desperate courage. By sunset the army was annihilated, the king captured, the true cross lost. On October 2nd, with no field army left to defend it, Jerusalem surrendered. The holy city did not fall because Saladin was too strong. It fell because the army meant to protect it had already been destroyed by one man, in one tent, on one night, who chose pride over prudence. This is the story that gets buried beneath grand battle epics, but it is the truest story of all. One decision destroyed the only army that could defend Jerusalem. A single conversation in the dark. A king's terror of being called a coward. The refusal to heed the best advice he ever received. And the price. A holy city lost. A wound in history that has never fully healed. All of it turning on the hinge of one man's pride. If you want more stories that uncover the hidden decisions behind history's greatest turning points, subscribe and tell us in the comments. What moments deserve this kind of deep look? We read every single one.